Life Stories presents a powerful tale of resilience, family betrayal, and the pursuit of one's dreams. Emma, always overshadowed by her successful sister, finds herself pushed aside by her parents' favoritism. But when her beloved grandpa leaves her a life-changing legacy, Emma discovers her own strength and the power of numbers. Will she reclaim her future and build the life she's always dreamed of? This is a story of overcoming adversity, standing up for yourself, and embracing the opportunities that life offers. Subscribe to the channel to begin today's story. Growing up, I always knew my place in the family pecking order, dead last. My name is Emma, and for as long as I can remember, my older sister, Sarah, was the household superstar while I was just there. There's a distinct moment that I still carry with me, one that serves as a stark reminder of just how invisible I often felt in my own home. I was 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table, excited to show my mom my perfect spelling test. I remember the pride swelling in my chest as I held it up for her to see. "Mom, look," I said, almost breathless. "I got them all right." She barely glanced at it. She was too busy. Her focus was glued to Sarah's college applications sprawled across the table, her mind lost in the intricacies of the essays Sarah was perfecting. "That's nice, honey," she murmured, not even looking up, already flipping through another draft of Sarah's essay. "Now, Sarah, what if we rephrase this section about your volunteer work? It'll really make you stand out." I stood there, holding my paper, my hand slightly trembling as I slowly let it drop back to the table. Sarah was always the one in the spotlight. She was 10 years older than me, and by the time I could even form memories, she had already begun collecting accolades like some kids collect trading cards. Student body president, valedictorian, a full ride to Princeton. The list of her accomplishments was endless. I watched it all, day after day, with a mixture of pride, admiration, and a quiet ache that I couldn't quite place. Mom and Dad were always quick to celebrate Sarah. Every victory, big or small, was a triumph for them. At awards ceremonies, they were there, beaming with pride. At debate competitions, they were in the front row, their faces lit up with excitement. And where was I? I was the one sitting quietly at the dinner table, pushing peas around my plate, trying to fade into the wallpaper, hoping no one would notice my presence. But there was one constant in my life, someone who always saw me, always made me feel valued. Grandpa John. He lived alone in the big house on Oakwood Street, the one with the creaky wraparound porch where we'd sit for hours, while Mom juggled her real estate deals and Dad spent long hours at his law firm. I would walk to Grandpa's house every day after school. It became my refuge, the one place where I felt truly seen. Grandpa would tell me stories about his days as a sharp-witted businessman, sharing tales of deals made and fortunes built. His office was always a maze of papers, ledgers, and the scent of old books. But the best part was the chocolate chip cookies. There was always a fresh batch waiting for me, and every time I bit into one, I felt the love he poured into everything he did. "You know, kiddo," he'd say, sliding a cookie my way. "Sometimes the quietest ones in the room end up making the biggest waves." He would wink at me, and I would always nod as if we shared some grand secret that the rest of the world couldn't understand. It was our bond, one that no one else seemed to notice. Every afternoon, Grandpa helped me with my math homework. But it wasn't just numbers. He used equations to teach me about compound interest, investments, and the importance of thinking strategically. "Numbers never lie," he would say, his eyes sparkling with pride. He believed in me in a way that my parents never did. At home, the air was suffocating, the conversations always revolving around Sarah's latest triumph. "Did you hear? Sarah's already a junior partner at 28. Mom would gush. Dad would nod approvingly, adding, "She's always been destined for great things." And there I was, trying to make sense of all the pieces, trying to find my place in a world that seemed to have already decided my future without me. Despite everything, I worked hard. I earned straight A's. I joined every business club I could find, pouring myself into school. I tried to chase a dream that no one else seemed to believe in. Except for Grandpa. He was my only supporter. My only constant in a world that felt increasingly alienating. He had seen something in me that no one else had. And that was enough to keep me going. Then, the summer before my senior year, everything changed. Grandpa was diagnosed with cancer. It was spreading fast. I remember the day he told me. He was sitting in his favorite chair, his face pale, but his eyes still sharp. "Emma," he said, his voice weak but determined. "Promise me something." I nodded, my heart sinking. "Anything. Grandpa. Just tell me." "Go to college," he whispered, gripping my hand. "Study business like we always talked about. Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do." I choked out a promise. I had already started looking at schools. And State University had an amazing business program. I smiled through my tears, trying to show him I was strong. "I'll do it. Grandpa. I'll go. I'll make you proud." His eyes filled with pride. "That's my girl. And remember, what do numbers never do? They never lie," I whispered, managing a small smile. 2 weeks later, he was gone. The funeral was a blur of black dresses and hollow condolences. Sarah flew in from New York, making sure everyone knew how much she'd sacrificed to be there. Mom fussed over Sarah's travel arrangements more than she mourned Grandpa. And there I was, standing in the back, trying to hold it all together, feeling like I had lost the only person who truly understood me. I threw myself into my college applications, determined to honor the promise I made to Grandpa. When my acceptance letter to State University's business program arrived, I felt like I could finally breathe. I rushed into the kitchen that evening, practically bursting with excitement. "Mom, Dad, I got in. State University's business program accepted me," I said, my voice trembling with joy. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom and Dad exchanged a loaded glance. One of those looks that always meant bad news. Sarah, seated at the table with them, didn't even glance up from her phone. "Honey," Mom started in her saccharine voice, "we need to talk about college." Dad cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "Your college fund, well, it's gone." My heart sank. "What?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Gone." Mom shifted uncomfortably. "We gave it to Sarah for her wedding." I blinked, not understanding. "Surely, my college fund? Grandpa's college fund. You gave it to Sarah? Don't be dramatic." Mom waved me off. "Sarah's marrying James, the investment banker. Remember? They needed help with the wedding and a house down payment. You'll figure something out. You're good with numbers." And that was it. That was all they had to say. Sarah smiled from across the table, her expression not even remotely apologetic. "You can be my maid of honor. Emma. Isn't that better than some boring business degree?" I fled to my room, the acceptance letter crumpled in my hands, tears blurring my vision. Downstairs, I could still hear them talking about wedding venues and centerpieces, as if they hadn't just crushed my dreams. It was in that moment, lying awake in the dark, that I remembered Grandpa's words, "Numbers never lie." There was something I was forgetting. Something important. And then it hit me. 2 weeks before he passed, Grandpa had shown me his office, the old oak desk, the keys, and the false bottom drawer. Just in case, he'd said with a knowing smile. I didn't understand at the time. But now, it all seemed so clear. I had a feeling the story was far from over. The next morning, I drove to Grandpa's house, clutching the spare key he had given me. The house felt eerily quiet as I walked through the front door. It was as if it had been holding its breath for this very moment, waiting for me to come back. I moved slowly, taking in the familiar scent of old books and dust. my heart heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. I went straight to his office. The room where so many of our conversations had taken place. It still smelled like him. A mixture of leather and aftershave. But it felt different now. As if I was stepping into a world that was no longer mine. I opened the drawer that Grandpa had always called his secret compartment. It was the same drawer he had shown me years ago. The one with the false bottom. My fingers found the hidden latch. And my heart raced as I pulled it open. Inside was a single envelope with my name on it. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Knowing that this was the moment Grandpa had prepared for. I opened it carefully, as if I were holding something fragile. And pulled out the sheet of paper inside. It was Grandpa's handwriting, neat, precise, and familiar. My dearest Emma. The letter began. If you're reading this, it means you've remembered our lessons, numbers never lie, and neither did my faith in you. For years. I've watched your parents elevate Sarah and disregard your dreams. That ends now. What they don't know, what no one knows except my lawyer, is that I've built something extraordinary during my years in business. The house you're standing in is only a small piece of it. I've established a trust fund for you, Emma. One that dwarfs your old college fund. Everything I have, I'm leaving to you. My heart skipped a beat. I read the letter again. My mind struggling to process what I was seeing. Grandpa had left me everything. Not just his house or his savings, but an entire company, one that was worth millions. The letter went on to explain that I was now the owner of Oakwood Street Investment Group, a company with holdings across several states. My parents would receive the standard inheritance, but they would never know about the company or its portfolio unless I chose to tell them. It was all mine, and I could use it however I saw fit. The details are with my lawyer, Arthur Bennett. His card is attached to this letter. He'll explain everything. Grandpa wrote. But here's the short version. You are now the owner of Oakwood Street Investment Group and all its holdings. Use it wisely. Get your degree. Build the future you deserve. And remember, numbers never lie. I sat there in Grandpa's office. Stunned. The world felt as if it had tilted on its axis. This was what I had always dreamed of, an opportunity to build something of my own. To prove my worth. To show that I wasn't just Sarah's little sister. But it was more than that. Grandpa had seen my potential. Even when no one else had. He had believed in me in a way that no one else ever had. And now, he was giving me the chance to take control of my life in a way I never thought possible. P.S. The combination to my wall safe is your birthday. Inside, you'll find something else I left for you. I could hardly breathe as I processed everything. My mind raced. But there was one thing that stood out above all else, Grandpa's unwavering belief in me. It was more than a financial gift, it was a message. A message that said I was worthy. That I was capable. That I could build something real. Something of my own. I quickly made my way to the wall safe, which was hidden behind a painting of the New York Stock Exchange that Grandpa had always kept in his office. My fingers fumbled with the combination. But soon enough, the lock clicked open. Inside was another envelope. This one thicker. Filled with documents, deeds, bank statements, company ledgers. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. Oakwood Street Investment Group wasn't just some small family business. It was a multi-million-dollar corporation, with properties and investments spread across 3 states. According to these papers, I owned all of it. Every single asset. Every property. Every piece of the company was mine. I felt a sense of power I had never known before. But more than that, I felt a responsibility, a duty to honor Grandpa's legacy. To live up to the faith he had placed in me. The next morning, I called Arthur Bennett's office. His secretary put me through immediately when I mentioned my name. "Ah, Miss Emma," he said warmly. "I've been expecting you. Your grandfather spoke highly of you. Can we meet this afternoon?" Hours later, I sat in Mr. Bennett's office, still trying to absorb everything. He was a tall man with a kind face. And when he spoke, His voice carried a weight of authority. Your grandfather was very thorough. Miss Emma, he said. The trust fund he set up for you is worth approximately $47 million. Everything has been structured to ensure your complete control. Your parents' inheritance, what they're entitled to, is modest in comparison. I felt as if the ground beneath me had shifted. $47 million. I couldn't even fathom the number. But the more I listened, the more everything began to fall into place. Grandpa had planned every detail with meticulous care. The company, the trust, the inheritance, it was all designed with one purpose: to give me a future, to give me a chance. As I walked out of Mr. Bennett's office, my heart was pounding with excitement and fear in equal measure. I felt a weight on my shoulders. But it was a weight I was ready to carry. I was finally in control of my own future. And with that thought, I felt something else too: freedom. The freedom to be myself, to choose my own path, to build my own legacy. The following days were a blur. I moved back into Grandpa's house, now mine, and began to acclimate to my new life as the owner of Oakwood Street Investment Group. I spent hours in his office, poring over the business records, trying to make sense of everything. The more I learned, the more I felt a sense of or mixed with trepidation. I had a multi-million-dollar company at my fingertips, yet I knew I had to be cautious, measured, and deliberate in every decision I made. Grandpa's lessons about numbers and about life were more important now than ever. But amid the excitement of this new chapter in my life, one thing weighed heavily on me: my family. The anger and betrayal I felt after learning about the misuse of my college fund still simmered beneath the surface. How could my parents do this to me? How could they take everything I had worked so hard for and give it to Sarah, simply to fund her wedding? That evening, I received a message from Mom. Don't forget. We're meeting at the house tonight to finalize the wedding details. It's important. Emma, she texted. I could feel her pressure through the words. Even though they were carefully crafted to sound neutral. I had been avoiding family gatherings since the college fund incident. But tonight felt different. Tonight, I knew I couldn't keep running from the truth. I had to face them. And I had to do it on my terms. When I walked into the dining room, I found my parents sitting at the table with Sarah, discussing floral arrangements for the wedding. They looked up at me as I entered. But no one said anything right away. I set my bag down, the tension in the air palpable. We've been waiting for you, Emma, Mom said, not looking up from the list of possible flowers. We need to finalize the bridesmaid dresses. And then we can discuss the other details. You're still on board, right? I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. This was the moment. This was where everything would change. I think we need to talk about something else first, I said, my voice steady but firm. I pulled out the papers from Grandpa's trust documents that detailed the entire scope of Oakwood Street Investment Group and the inheritance Grandpa had left me. I placed them on the table, watching as my parents exchanged uneasy glances. Sarah didn't even look up from her phone. Emma, what's this about? Dad asked, his voice tinged with impatience. This is about the company, I said, my voice cutting through the tension in the room. This is Oakwood Street Investment Group. Grandpa left it to me. It's worth millions. And now, I'm the one in charge. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents stared at me, their faces pale. Sarah finally glanced up from her phone, her eyes widening in disbelief. You're joking, Dad muttered, flipping through the papers in front of him. This can't be right. It's right, I said. Grandpa left me everything. He set up a trust. And he made sure I had control over this company. Everything else, the house. The money you thought you had a claim to, is mine now. All of it. I saw the color drain from Mom's face as she read the letter Grandpa had left me, her hand trembling as she flipped through the pages. I could feel the weight of her gaze as she processed the enormity of what I had just revealed. You're making a mistake, Emma, Dad said, his voice shaking now, his lawyerly tone giving way to a hint of desperation. "This isn't how things are supposed to go. We've worked so hard for this family. Your grandfather, he wouldn't want you to be so selfish." I stood taller, looking directly at him. "Selfish? You're the ones who took my college fund. Dad. You're the ones who decided that Sarah's wedding was more important than my future. You can't tell me I'm being selfish when you've been taking everything from me for years." Sarah sat in stunned silence, her mouth opening and closing as if she were trying to find the right words. But nothing came out. She had always been the golden child, the one everyone had rooted for. But now, the tables were turning, and I was no longer the invisible sister in the background. I had something she didn't. I had control, and she didn't like it. "Emma, you can't do this," Sarah finally said, her voice weak. "You can't just take everything. You can't take away our family's future." "I'm not taking anything," I replied, my voice unwavering. "This is mine. Grandpa gave it to me. I've worked for this. I've worked for everything I have. And now, I'm going to college on my terms." I could see the panic in their eyes, the realization that their control over me was slipping away. For the first time, I felt a rush of liberation. The years of being dismissed, of being overlooked, were finally behind me. I wasn't going to play by their rules anymore. "You'll still help with the wedding, right?" Sarah asked, her tone laced with a thin layer of charm. But I wasn't fooled. She was desperate. "I mean, we're family. After all." I laughed, a bitter edge to my voice. "Family? You mean the family that stole my future for the sake of your wedding? Find someone else to finance your dream wedding." "Sarah, maybe James can help you. After all, he's an investment banker." I turned and walked out of the room, the sound of their protest fading behind me. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally standing up for myself. And it felt good. That night, I lay in bed, my mind spinning. I had made my decision. I was going to make Grandpa proud. I was going to show the world and my family that I was more than just Sarah's little sister. I had my own dreams now, and nothing, not even my family, was going to stop me from chasing them. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. I knew that. But I was ready. Ready to take control of my future. Ready to make the biggest waves I could. Because numbers, as Grandpa always said, never lie. And now, the numbers were finally on my side. In the end, I stood tall, having finally reclaimed my future. The company was thriving under my leadership, and I was on my way to college, pursuing the business degree Grandpa had always dreamed of for me. As I walked through the halls of Oakwood Street Investment Group, the weight of the legacy Grandpa left me was no longer a burden but a gift. It wasn't just the money or the company, it was the opportunity to build my own path. To become someone who was never going to fade into the background again. The family tried to reach out, but their messages were empty. They had already shown me who they were. Now, I was free, standing on my own, with nothing but possibility ahead of me. Grandpa had always said, "Numbers never lie," and I finally understood the depth of those words. I was ready to make my mark. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more life stories.